All right, for our opening session today, we are going to start from hearing from our two co-founders, Mark Oswald and Patrick Wilczek, for TAO days for the past, present, and future. I'm going to hand it over to Samantha, who's going to do a brief introduction and get started.
Thank you, Ashley. As Ashley mentioned, we're excited to introduce our speakers today. And in just a moment, I will be diving into that. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few items. So audience members will be muted during the discussion, and we'll have time for a Q&A at the end of the session. So please drop any questions that you have into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer those for you as we get towards the end of the Q&A to that portion of the session. So as Ashley mentioned, we're excited to get things started off with a fireside chat between our founders, and it's my pleasure to introduce them to you now. So we have Mark Oswald, our co-founder and CEO here at Open Assessment Technologies, which he launched in 2013 and established as the de facto market leader for open and innovative assessment solutions. Mark is a vocal proponent of open interoperability and open standards, and has spearheaded achievements with the IMS Global Learning Consortium in the United States to improve standards compliance and provide end users with a strong voice in setting the direction of assessment technology. In recent years, Mark has worked closely with leading ministries of education in Europe to launch Flip Plus, a fast-growing organization that embodies the sharing economy in assessment. We also have Patrick Wilczek with us, our co-founder and solutions architect at Open Assessment Technologies, where he is strongly involved in the field of computer-based assessment, conducting research and solutions management for national projects at OAT, and pioneering many countrywide TAO deployments. He has also managed software engineering aspects of the international large-scale surveys, including PIAC and PISA. And so without further ado, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Mark and Patrick to start the conversation.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sam, and hi, Patrick.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Doing good, thank you. Nice to be here. And also hello to our audience. It's been quite a while that we haven't had a TAO Days event, and so we thought we'd start reflecting a little bit on the origins, not just of TAO Days, but of TAO, and to share a bit of the spirit and sense of community that we've been building over the years. And because TAO is truly unique in being a fully functional, complete assessment platform, being the only open source assessment platform at scale. And I'm particularly pleased to see so many community members today. So looking at the registration list, we see a lot of people who are TAO core users, the users of our community edition. And this is an audience we don't get to interact with much. As a company, we spend most of our time with our customers. And so I don't know about you, Patrick, but I'm really happy to see turnout today.
We have people from all over the world, right? I mean, including from Australia, from South America, North America. So it's exciting to see that the community is that broad.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you to all of you out there for connecting today. And we hope we have an exciting 2-day program. The first day, we're going to recap a little bit what we've been up to over all these years, and talk a little bit more about how we're going to organize the open source community going forward. So that is the main focus for today. And tomorrow, as you can see from the agenda, we'll be going much more into how users are working with TAO, how they're putting it to use, their lessons learned. And tomorrow we'll also be going a lot deeper into the TAO roadmap, really what's in store over the next couple of years. But Patrick, I think you're the guy who wrote the first line of code.
True. Yeah, I mean, it's
tell us a little bit about.
well, yeah, it has been a long journey, right? So it's 20 years now, actually. So I started to write the first line of codes in 2002, and well, to be honest, I'm not saying there were no bugs in that first line of code, right? But now that we have a proper team of developers, everything has been fixed since then, right? But yeah, it was back in. Yeah, true, true. And yeah, I mean, it has been a long journey and a growing community, clearly. And to tell you a bit about the history of TAO, we started very small. We started in Luxembourg, and so small country, right? Where is even Luxembourg on the map, right? So, and the numbers were low. We started, I think it was also mandated assessments already. So national diagnostic of all the students to improve the education system. And there were 6,000 kids taking online assessments. Pretty low number compared to what we have today, right? But and the concurrency, are you seated, right? The concurrency was 26 concurrent test takers. So compared to the hundreds of thousands of test takers we have today, yeah, we did a lot of progress. But still, with those 26 concurrent test takers back then, with the technology that we had and the physical servers, it was already, we were a bit nervous, right? And I remember, together with Renal Jadot, who was also one of the first developers on TAO, that we were sleeping, literally sleeping in the server room, to be honest with you. We were anxious, right? Because obviously we didn't know exactly the pattern of load, how students would behave, what they would do, etc. Right? So yeah, that was the very first use case. It was in 2003 or something like this. Right?
So, and then fast forward a few years, PISA happened, right? I think that was the big breakthrough of TAO on the international
PISA was the real start for us, right? I mean, it was kind of the broader scope of very, very challenging, because I mean, we were okay, so we were moving from those 26-ish concurrent test takers to 26 countries, right? Taking assessments at the same time, right? So, and very much professional process behind the item authoring, translation, adaptation, and all of that we had to cover with the technology. Right? So it was indeed a big challenge. And yeah, I have this souvenir, right? When looking at this picture that Ashley kindly put on screen, I had the souvenir that, I mean, we were coming from the research area, right? From the open source area. And there with PISA, we had those formal meetings with all the countries, like this one, right, happening in OECD premises in Paris, which are quite impressive, right? It looks like a bit those United Nations meetings, right, with all the countries represented and this little flag on the desk and these kind of things. And then there was us, right, in the middle of that room, a bit exaggerating, but almost wearing our Star Wars t-shirts, right, and promoting open source and etc. Right, so that was kind of the world we were coming from, but entering a world of professional assessment, authoring, and delivery. Right, so that was for me the great start of TAO, really entering those international studies.
And I think the origins being research paid off really well for TAO, because one of the very early design and architecture decisions that you guys made was to use the resource description framework.
Right.
And that is still paying off nicely for us today, giving us a very powerful metadata management system.
True. Yeah, it was and it's still today, right? One of the strengths of the TAO platform, right? It's heavily based on this RDF framework, which basically the benefit, right, for our users is that they can be very flexible in terms of the metadata they want to put on their items within their item bank, right? Because we know, and this is true every day with any of our customer or users from the community that the scheme to describe items, the scheme to align your items with standards, etc., always differ, right? So it's always different from one country to the other, from one context to the other. So we need to be flexible. And this foundation with RDF, I think, helped us a lot, really. It was one of the key differentiator of our platform, in addition to being open source.
And it was really PISA that triggered the future growth and evolution of TAO. Because what the benefit of PISA, and we ran these campaigns in 2009 and 2012, and it put TAO on the map in a big way. And in particular, because it was released as open source, I think at the time it was the first time that countries, in particular the ministries of education in all these countries, were able to use an open system.
Open system, yeah, and there is a strong interest, obviously, from countries, right, in making sure that all the technology that is being built in those OECD studies becomes open source, because obviously those countries, they want to reuse that, right? Because they invest into that through the OECD, so they want to reuse it. They want to be in a position to reuse it for their own national assessments, right? And improve their, their competitiveness in terms of education system.
Yeah, so, and that actually aligned well with a directive at the time that we received from the Luxembourg government, because a lot of the funding for the initial development of TAO was coming through research funds from Luxembourg. And so the governments are, at least here in Luxembourg, they look at getting value out of the investments they make in R&D. And so they asked us to look at ways to extract value out of the product that had been created. And so when you're dealing with software, I mean, you can license software. That's one way of extracting value. Or you can actually build a business around it. And in our case, licensing an open source product, there wasn't much value to be generated just out of having the license, because as everybody here I'm sure knows, open source means you have the right to use the software, to modify the source code, and to redistribute it. And so that shifted kind of the focus for us on building a business around.
But yeah, and I remember, so back in 2011, right, and that's pretty much the time where you really helped us, right, getting to this new dimension, because we were, as a matter of fact, more software engineers than anything else, right? So you basically took us out of our server room and ask us, what are the competitors? Why? What are the key features that customers will want in the future? Right?
Yeah, I remember that session, and I got blank stares.
True. Exactly. I mean, we can talk technology, we can talk LDFS, but yeah, I mean, that's the new dimension.
Well, and that was a big breakthrough, because then I went out there to find out, well, what's out there. And I remember very, like it was yesterday, I go to the ATP conference, I believe it was in Arizona, and in 2011. And for those of you who haven't been to ATP, so it's a combination trade show where all the vendors are exhibiting their products, and ATP is the Association of Test Publishers. So it is like laser sharp focus on assessment, not just education, not just K-12, but also the licensure and certification space, professional credentialing and so forth. And so it's part trade show and part presentations and conferences. And I remember I walked into the trade show and it was like stepping back in time over 20 years, because what I saw in front of me was a collection of proprietary systems where no system was able to talk to another system. And then I stepped into a presentation from a very reputable company in the education space, and the gentleman goes up on stage and in front of the full audience says, interoperability is kind of a new thing to us. And that was in 2011. And I'm going like, dude, where were you the last 20 years? Because that's what we've been doing in high tech. It's tearing down these walls, agreeing on industry standards and opening things up. And this leads me to another anecdote a year later, 2012. So 2012, by then we had decided to build a business case, write up the business plan, and we took a booth at that conference. And so we're all proud there, coming with our TAO banner, open source assessment platform, A to Z, full assessment lifecycle. And so it didn't take long, and one of the other vendors comes walking up to me during a break and plants himself right in front of me like a drill sergeant and stares me in the eye and goes, open source, so you're going to destroy our entire industry. And I couldn't help but I laughed at the guy and I said, no, because closed markets don't grow. We're here to open things up. And once you open things up, once interoperability happens, you get the benefits of scale, and you get all the creativity that goes into apps and systems, and you can suddenly use a much richer ecosystem. And that is exactly what happened over the last 10 years. And the pandemic, as bad as it was in the education technology sector, it served as a big accelerator in driving the digitization of education. And but yeah, so that was in 2012. And
yeah, I mean, it has been key also for us to push on the standards thing, right? Because this is also one of the key message from OET is that we want basically all the users not to be locked into any platform, right? We want to make sure that the content can be exported and imported in and out, right? I mean, this is for us very important. That's why also we have been very active in the standards with many contributors. And at the entrance of the office, we have all the awards, right? And I think we have pretty much about 10 awards or something like this, right? Did you know, by the way, Christoph got another one last week?
No kidding.
On the assessment task force. He got another one again.
Wow, congratulations.
So, yeah, I think standards, we have been pushing a lot there, and I think this is key.
That was another revealing moment, because it was one of the founding team members, Jerome, who actually started working on QTI, and didn't take long, and we get an email from IMS and saying, hey, can you guys join the QTI committee? And I was all over it when I heard it, because I worked in standardization before, and it's a real exposure especially for a startup. And and the big thing for us really was, so we then go to become a member of the QDI Standards Committee, and we're sitting there alongside the big boys like Pearson and ETS. And we were a small team out of Luxembourg, just 8 people, right? And but then fast forward, so we did the business plan. We actually got funding to start the company, and that was the birth of OAT, Open Assessment Technologies. And the pun is, by the way, fully intended. TAO spelled backwards. So the thing I want to add about standards is, of course, it wasn't just about recognition for us, but really about advancing the end user's interests. Because still today, when you ask about the big pain points in education technology, the lack of interoperability is still a major issue. A lot of improvements have been done, but compared to other industries in high tech, it's still got ways to go. So if you take QTI content, it is much more portable than anything else you could do, but not nearly as portable as what we're used to with PDF or MP3.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're far from that. So a lot of progress has been made with QTI. We're continuing to push the envelope, but we still have work to do. And the big reason is that in the past, a lot of the vendors were paying lip service to this industry standards. And if there's one recommendation I can give to everybody out there when you go out to procure solutions, make sure you ask for certified products, so that are certified to be standards-based. And in our sector, IMS Global, which by the way is now called One EdTech, is doing these certifications. So being QTI certified or having a QTI certified product gives you much higher level of interoperability than if you just ask for QTI compliance. Because if it's just compliance, it's good faith by the vendor who tells you, yeah, I'm compliant, right? And a lot of vendors can claim that, but being certified is actually, you have to put your product through a set of test suites, and there's a neutral entity, in this case, IMS Global, who then issues the certificate to that states that you comply.
Right, there's a full process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so standards certification is really key.
Right.
Another thing you should look at when you go into procurement or go looking for solutions is whether the vendor has signed the standards first pledge. And that's also something that IMS spearheaded. And our company, of course, has signed the pledge, meaning that we implement the standards that, and like in the case of QTI, we implemented it natively. And so which further removes any potential barrier to interoperability.
Yeah, interoperability, open source. And the other thing which is still a bit key, whenever you want to operate a countrywide deployment of assessment solution, is the reliability of the cloud service, right? Where we improved a lot, right? Over, I think we focused a lot on that in 2016, 2017, where, and you can see why from the newspaper that it is still challenging nowadays, right, to provide a fully scalable and secured cloud service on top of an assessment. There are attacks, right, happening very frequently. Nowadays, anyone can go on website and they can buy a DDoS attack. And by the way, just for the anecdote, right, our very first attack, to be honest, security attacks, it's standard business. But our very first one, it was in 2016, 2017, and it was a major DDoS. And it was not one of those automated DDoS attack. But it was quite exciting, right, to see suddenly on the dashboards of our cloud service, to see 160 million requests flowing on our servers. Right, so, and being in a position with your cloud to mitigate this kind of attacks is crucial, because there are always political issues or pushback from unions, etc. It happens. So you need to make sure that your cloud is set up to take that into account. And yeah, for the story, I mean, when this happened, this very first attack is that all the requests were rerouted basically on edge server. So, and it was live during a real assessment. So all the kids taking tests, an attack happens, but still there was no impact at all because all the requests were led on edge servers, and so the attacker did not notice. And yeah, I mean, it was quite interesting. Plus, it was a smart attack because we could see over the course of 2 days iterations of the attacks getting smarter and smarter. So we were always wondering, okay, what is the next move?
Yeah.
That was really exciting. So building a secured cloud, I think, has also been a key improvement, a key feature from OET.
Yeah, that was a great big lesson learned for us, because the bottom line is it's not a question if you will suffer an attack. It's really when will you suffer it, and that's why we invested so much in TAO Cloud. I think the last on-premise deployment that we did as a company was in 2014, 2015. And it was for a European customer. We had to deploy on a national data center provider's infrastructure. And of course, compared to Amazon or Google Cloud platform, you don't find any of the
auto-scaling,
the support for more elastic databases, and we really had a hard time. We were able to pull it off, the campaign. I think we pushed out to about 10,000 concurrent on premise. But now on the cloud, I mean, we can scale up to 250,000 concurrent test takers in no time.
Yeah, and scale up and scale down, right? So that there is also, I mean, I think nowadays using cloud is really important also in terms of cost, right? Being involved, right? Because when you go on premises, you need to acquire all this hardware, etc. And you have it, you use it for your countrywide assessments, and then the rest of the time, those servers are useless, right? So unless you want to mine some bitcoins with it, or I don't know. I mean, with cloud, we ramp up, we ramp down, and then we can get our cost much lower and price lower for our customers. So.
And so it's about that, and it's about the layers of safety, especially when it comes to attacks, cyber attacks. I think you have a lot more tools at your disposal if you're in the cloud as opposed to on premise. And so I think looking at all the restrictions that get placed on accessing student data, it is really important to when you design your solution to the largest extent possible to work with anonymized student IDs. So when we design the solutions, what we tell or recommend to our customers is when they go into scheduling the assessment, that the rostering system provides us with an anonymous ID. We run everything in the cloud, and then afterwards the results with the anonymous ID goes back on premise on the customer's infrastructure, and there they can map then back to the individual.
I mean, we need to be very wise when it comes to any data that allows basically to recoup with any physical person. We need to use that data wisely, and the less we have, the better, right, in general. So Mark, I think we could talk during hours like that, but let's say a few words about the TAO days.
Yeah, you're right. And so TAO days, we used to have these conferences. I think we launched them in 2011.
2011, yeah.
And then up until 2014. And after that, we started going to all the big conferences like the IMS Global event, the ATP events, and other conferences. And but we've now reached such a global footprint that we decided to come back and reinstate the TAO days, because like we said at the beginning, we have participants here from all corners of the globe, and we really want to bring this community together again and get people to participate in shaping the future of TAO. And but what was the original idea? I mean, when you guys started TAO Days over 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean the trigger, right, for the TAO Days was that so we wanted to to release TAO open source, but we did not want just to release it directly on SourceForge, right? Back then it was SourceForge, not GitHub, but we did not want just to put it there and forget about it, and obviously have it not being maintained or whatsoever. So we thought that we will basically build a community around it, right? Foster really the community around it, because otherwise it's just not going to be used. And there were some goals right behind it. We wanted multiple goals. We wanted to obviously to get contributions, right, on the technology, on the software itself, right? Can we get people to help fixing bugs, translating, building new features, etc., from all those users, all those countries? Let's try to get those contributions back. There was also a goal, right, to share a bit experience, right? So, and that's why also when you look at the agenda from all the previous TAO Days, and this time again, right, there is a strong focus also on the experience from users, what they experience, the challenge, pros and cons as well, so that everyone can benefit from those experience. And also we wanted to exchange around the content, right? Possibly having item bank traveling from countries to countries. So that was the goal at the beginning, and so we started to make the TAO Days, and we triggered a bit our network of research back then, right, with multiple institutions like DIP, etc. And we had about 40 to, I think the last even was 60 people. So I don't know how many people we have today, but I guess we're a bit more than that. But yeah, I think it was quite successful, very interesting, and always two tracks. One with use cases, usually with the people wearing shirts and ties, and then there was the hands-on session, really practical session, right, with the geeks like me, sitting down together with the IT person from the institution and basically showing how it was working.
Yeah, working directly with users, and well, we have lots of users here waiting to speak to us. So we're going to open up the session now for questions, and there's already quite a few in the chat box here. So one question here is the maximum concurrency reached on the cloud by TAO. That I think we had one customer pushing us to 250,000 concurrent starts of test sessions, and that's the highest number we've done in a commercial scenario. Simply because there's not been a bigger use case that we've come across. But the technology can go quite a bit higher still, and especially with the new test runner TAO Advanced, we can go well above 1 million.
Indeed, yeah.
And so what other questions do we have?
I see we have a question here from Ali Aziz. How many test takers can take tests simultaneously on the core edition?
On a TAO core, yeah, good question. So what we did, and that was 2014, 2015, we pushed it to 10,000. And that was on this third-party data center infrastructure. We know from one of our users, the assessment organization out of the country of Georgia. They recently pushed it to 7,000. And so that 7,000, 10,000, I think is what you can.
Yeah, and it's a difficult question, right? Because it's always linked to the infrastructure and the type of deployment you do, right? It's not just about software, right? It's also about all the infrastructure, the services, etc. And this is basically the experience that OAT has acquired over time, deploying TAO calls or for larger scale, right? So, and it really requires this experience to get higher numbers, right? So there are configuration settings, there are small tweaks, you need to experiment the cloud services, and there are differences also between the cloud providers that respect. So it's a bit difficult to respond with an absolute number to how many test takers simultaneously you can deliver with Community Edition, since it's linked to the infrastructure services you use, configurations, and that's really the experience we have developed.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to understand, that when you deploy TAO on a server, you're not just only deploying TAO. You need a web server that can carry the load. You need a database or two.
Cache servers, CDN, the DNS.
So there's many components involved that have to be equally tweaked, and that's why we focus on the clouds, because we have a consistent, stable environment, and there we can really push the limit.
Right. Yeah.
All right. We still have some time for questions. One that frequently comes up is when we talk about open source and the software, you can use it without any licensing fees. The question we get is, well, what about my content? If I create my test questions in TAO, does that mean that they have to be open as well? And the answer clearly is no. In this, maybe a good example is Microsoft Word. The novel you write in Microsoft Word or in Google, free product, Word isn't free, so a free text editor. If you write a novel, you're the owner of the novel. Same with your assessment content. That is protected under your, as per your licensing rights.
And I see we have one other question, it looks like in the chat, Mark. How can OAT contribute to develop a share spirit in a community of users?
Very good question, and a great segue also to the next presentation, because our next speaker, Ashley and Sam, will be introducing in a moment, but comes from the Linux Foundation, and will be talking about how do you really build a successful open source ecosystem. And then after the presentation, I will be back talking about the TAO user group that we are launching. So that is a new organization, and I'll be explaining that's exactly going to be the answer to the question here. It's going to be a forum decoupled from the company OAT, and that allows users to come together and to collaborate and to help us advance the TAO product line.